For months, a bipartisan housing bill sat waiting for a presidential signature. 50 provisions designed to build more homes, bring down costs, and put limits on private equity firms buying up single-family neighborhoods. A senior Senate Democrat says he now has a theory for why President Trump let it die. His explanation cuts to a pattern that defines everything else you are about to see. In this administration, personal benefit comes before public need.
Donald Trump has said all along that he thinks affordability is a hoax. It doesn't really exist, ho-hum. He has made clear he doesn't care about families in America. He doesn't care about their costs. He doesn't care about how they're struggling. And frankly, he clearly doesn't care about Republicans in the House and the Senate, who at least could have stood up and said, you know, we got one thing done besides tax breaks for billionaires. Right. But no, Donald Trump didn't bother doing that either. And I actually have a theory now. And my theory is there was nothing in it for Donald Trump. There were no gold statues for Donald Trump, no gold bars for Donald Trump, no naming opportunities for Donald Trump, no arches for Donald Trump in this housing bill. This was just a housing bill that has nearly 50 provisions in it, all of which are about building more housing and bringing down costs and, for the first time ever in American history, beating back private equity and saying they can't come in and buy up all our houses and turn us into a nation of renters. So I guess we've learned the lesson. If you want to get something, if you want Donald Trump's signature, you need to give a little something to Donald Trump to make it happen.
While families wait for relief, taxpayer money is flowing toward a different set of priorities. Oversight Democrats have spent months documenting a series of projects. A Kennedy Center renovation with Trump loyalists installed on its board, a new reflecting pool on the National Mall, and an arch that the president has openly said is a monument to himself. What the congressman speaking next wants to know is who is getting the contracts and why.
What do you make of what the committee could do next year on these Trump vanity projects? What would you want to get your teeth into?
Well, first, I mean, the American public really cares about this. There's an attachment to America's monuments, whether it's the White House, whether it's the reflecting pool. These are places that people know. There is clear corruption happening. I mean, when Donald Trump's personal friends, neighbors at Mar-a-Lago, donors are getting contracts that they're not qualified for, that is real corruption. So oversight is every single one of those. Oversight is investigating, whether it's the pool, whether it's the Kennedy Center, what Trump tried to do there, installing his friends on the board and making himself the chair, whether it's this arch he's building. He's admitted he's building the arch to himself. It's an arch that he's honoring himself. And this is taxpayer dollars. And while people are struggling with gas and groceries and rent, he's building monuments to himself in DC and, quite frankly, destroying others. And so every one of these will be investigated through our work on oversight, and we're excited about the work because I think the American public care and they're on our side.
Accountability does not only live in policy. For years, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse have demanded access to Justice Department files that could name individuals who have never faced charges. The Senate is now deciding whether to confirm Todd Blanche as Attorney General. Half of the evidence from the Epstein investigation remains sealed. The survivors finally got a meeting. This is how they described it.
Hey, it's Congressman Garcia. I'm not sure if you just heard, but Todd Blanche finally, after relentless asks, actually met with some of the Epstein survivors in a quickly arranged meeting when he was essentially pressed to do so during a Senate confirmation. But if you've heard the responses from the survivors, they were incredibly disappointed by this meeting. There were no real answers, there were no real commitments, and quite frankly, the gaslighting by Todd Blanche needs to end. What he must do is release all of the Epstein files, or half of them. Half of the evidence in this investigation is still being held by the DOJ. But here's actually what some of the survivors actually said about that meeting. Blanche treated the meeting as a mere check-the-box exercise intended to secure votes for his confirmation. He danced around his wording and repeatedly interrupted us. We were gaslit, we were skipped over. It was frustrating, to say the least. I found him abrasive, condescending, and intentionally non-committal to survivors. He is leaving survivors trapped in the same endless loop of searching for answers and receiving none. His attempt at empathy and compassion really came off as patronizing and condescending. Todd Blanche should not be confirmed as Attorney General. Thanks so much.
The Epstein survivors are not the only ones fighting to preserve a record that someone in power would prefer not to exist. The National Museum of African American History and Culture, part of the Smithsonian in Washington, is facing what Democrats describe as a coordinated effort to dismantle it. The lawmaker who speaks next grew up in the era of segregation. He did not need notes. He needed to be heard.
Black people across this country are outraged at what is happening now with these efforts to do away with the African American Museum and all of the Smithsonian. So I know this is a big discussion about a lot of aspects about the museum, but I'm here as a black man who grew up in segregation, who wasn't allowed to go certain places, who drank from a water fountain that said colored, who found his mother and his father unable to do anything other than basic day work. And if for no one else, if for them and their spirit and all the other nameless and faceless black men in this country and black women who made their bodies bridges, that some of us could get to the university, that some of us could get to a good job, that some of us could get to the United States, if for no other reason, I want this to go out loud and clear, we will not let you destroy that museum. That history is too sacred, it is too precious, and it will not be erased. Because, as I said, if you attempt to erase it, we will continue to replace it over and over and over again. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
What gets erased is not always a building or a document. The United States has been at war with Iran. More than 400 Americans have been injured. 18 service members have been killed. The Trump administration withheld the most recent injury count from the public. Senator Elizabeth Warren, the top-ranking Democrat on the Senate Military Personnel Panel, delivered that accounting on the Senate floor.
The Trump administration withheld that nearly 100 U.S. troops were injured by Iran in the past few weeks. That means that now more than 400 Americans have been injured and 18 service members have sadly been killed. And even worse, the Trump administration is claiming 4 service members killed by Iran aren't a consequence of this illegal war because their deaths occurred after President Trump declared a ceasefire. It is a slap in the face to the families of these fallen service members, and it is un-American. These service members and their families have made tremendous sacrifices, and Donald Trump can't even explain how America is better off or how this war will end. All 3 of my brothers served in uniform, and I'm also the top-ranking Democrat on the Senate Military Personnel Panel. I know what families are going through when their loved ones are sent overseas to risk their lives. And right now, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth aren't making it any easier for those families.
18 service members dead, more than 400 wounded, a housing bill that died because there was nothing in it for the president, an attorney general nominee who left survivors feeling gaslit, a museum that exists because generations of Americans carried a history no one else would hold. The thread running through all of it is one question: who does this government actually work for? We will keep asking. That is the DC Brief. See you next time.